All right, so let's get started. Like, I will start with thank you everybody that is coming up. It's getting. I see the amount of people that is getting live now. I'm just going to send a story in on Instagram, and I will tag you. This is like a live television, right? And
Exactly. You should get an assistant for this, Hernan.
yeah, sure.
That's like for the next, going pro. Have
Totally.
someone else handle all this stuff for you.
Yeah, totally. I need a team. This is something that I will tell the people here that if there is more people from Cologne, we need to build a team, definitely. Yeah, we'll stack you so you can also spread the word that we are on air. All right, here we go. And yeah, so welcome. Okay, from Düsseldorf and from other friends from Argentina watching. So we have a bunch of people from around everywhere.
Going global.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to connect. I hope you enjoy this. A few things. First of all, well, this is our second event from the IDF Cologne. Like I said before, it would be nice if there is any other people than give me a second, than Jan. I already talked to Jan through LinkedIn. Hi, Jan. Because of it will be very interesting to know more people here in Cologne. Obviously, this is also why I joined the IDF as a local leader here. I'm living here in Cologne since 2 years. I'm from Argentina, actually. I think other people know already from the previous event if you were here. But yeah, so the important thing here is that just reach me out. You have my LinkedIn and the mural. You can contact me there or in Meetup or yeah, just find me there and just send me a message. It will be nice to know people. And if you want to be part of the team and my team, I mean, let's organize events together, or let's think together some other kind of events or whatever you have in mind. Maybe we can do something. It would be nice to meet you live, but now we can meet face to face with the distance and a mask and so on. But yeah, so just that's one of the things that I wanted to say before we start. The other thing is we created the mural. I already told this. I will copy paste in the also in the chat here in the in YouTube. So they all can see and enter. And yes, so I think this will be a quite interesting talking about the design sprint, actually, because when I met Margriet, I met her actually in an event like this, where the founders, let's say, of Design Sprint were both together with Sabrina from Stuttgart, right? And the Design Sprint meeting one. And it was super interesting to know a lot of people there. There was also a mural, so it's really nice because this mural will be a couple of days more online, so you can get all the contacts from the event and so on. I think the most important thing from this event is also networking. So we encourage you to copy paste there, and if you want to add questions already, that will be a good time to do it. So we jump into the talk. So about the talk, I was like super interested in something that Margriet was working on. We were talking about it, and it was really interesting how to, because it happened to me, and I think I always try to find some topics that are interesting for the community for sure. And obviously Design Sprint, we all know that it's like really like let's say, yeah, it's not a trend, but it's like there is a lot of things, a lot of people talking about Design Sprint. But this talk will not be about what is the Design Sprint per se, right? It will be more about what can we do in terms of culture, company, and so on. And I really found that really super interesting. And obviously that's why Margriet is here. besides that, she knows a lot about design sprints. She did a couple of events, and
A few.
yeah, a few. So it's really interesting because you have means that you have a lot of experience, a lot of errors, a lot of pitfalls, and whatever. That those are, I think, the most valuable for the people that is doing it. I'm honestly, to be honest, I did just one with some friends from Argentina. Actually, they're watching now. I was part of the team to build some project for a customer from Argentina, from this agency Nido, and it was really interesting to participate. Then I start studying more about design sprint, but still didn't do it myself. So I'm just running some light decisions jam to start, and then we'll jump into more things. But why I'm saying this, because I see that in my company it's really needed, this cultural shift. So, and this is, I think, where you can guide us, Margaret. So welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your kindness about sharing your mural. For everyone, just we can say thank you to Margaret to share this mural. We don't have the IDF account mural yet, but yeah. So just enjoy the mural and add wherever you want. If you add questions, please just add the questions on the right side of the mural, right? So we can then organize it well. And yeah, so welcome, Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you, Hernan. Thank you for having me. And it's quite an introduction. So now, of course, you always I have to, like, how do I say, make it come true, or, deliver on the promise. But good to be here indeed.
Cool. Awesome. So I would like to know, I mean, can you tell us more about obviously your experience, and to let us know more about yourself and how did you started this? How is that you crossed with the design sprint? How did you find it? How this actually, I was wondering today, because it happened to me also, what happened with this very first design sprint, right? And when you feel that you are gathering a lot of insights about that, every company, not every company, but a lot of companies needs, or will be nice to have it inside, and not just to run one or two from time to time, but make it part of as a culture. So yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead and tell us a bit more about you.
Yeah. So I think that's already a big introduction, but let me maybe just kind of, let's say, zoom out or zoom back. So I did my first design sprint, I think about 4 years ago, or a little bit more. It was literally when the book came out. And then if you say, I think if you ask, how did I get started? I think it was literally the first design sprint. It was actually a client that asked me, do you do design sprints? I was like, design sprints. I did workshops, similar types, but not the sprint. And I hadn't read the book, but this was a project in Istanbul. And I was like, oh, that sounds really fun. So I said, yeah, sure, I do this. And honestly, I read the book on the plane. And then every morning I would read a chapter and do the day of the sprint. So that was my first one. And now with Orange Minds, we're 104 sprints further. And it's just me and my boyfriend in Orange Minds. So it's 2 of us, and we don't always facilitate together. But I do like to say that I have 56 that I've done, let's say, solo. So I'm winning, at least if you're keeping track, the count of the number of sprints. But it's definitely quite I don't know if we'll call it significant or whatnot, but it is a big number. And I think there was kind of a point, I don't know, after a year or a year and a half that we were running design sprints, that I thought, okay, so I've done about 15 or 20. I know the process. Is this really interesting? Is this like something that I want to, continue with? And well, the answer was yes, because I think what it was for me, and that will tie into, I think the let's say the transformation or the culture shift, or those are all really big words, I think.
Yes.
And things that you don't achieve, in also not with 1 sprint, also not with 5 sprints. But what I saw, or why I really have, let's say, a deep love, or I don't know if you can call it a love for your work, for the sprint as a framework, it's just that it's so solid. And what I really like about it is that it kind of, for me, it does three things. So on the one hand, why we're usually hired, let's say, it's, you know, you have a challenge and a team or a company wants an answer. So that's kind of, you know, the work that's literally done. So that's one thing. I mean, it's tangible results. That's what companies like. It's something that's needed because the results are often faster than, you know, in a traditional way, let's say. But the other two things that really have, I don't know, fascinated me or bound me to the design sprint is, on the one hand, the individual reflection or learning. So it's really because you're going through this intensive week, and it's, you know, design thinking kind of made practical is the way I look at it. And that there's so many learnings in that week for an individual, you know, to actually see, hey, how can I work differently, and what's more effective, what's more efficient. It's often more fun. And then the same thing, or on a little bit different level, the team, you know, how you collaborate and how much you get done. So I think it's especially those three. So the results, the individual learning, and just like kind of the team building, that, you know, I really believe in the design sprint, and it's still not boring because it's every time, you know, the team is different, the dynamics are different. And I have seen, you know, Botox companies to insurance, pension, and banking, and I don't know, soil companies. So it's, you know, so many different types of worlds that I jump into that it's really yeah, fascinating, literally.
Yeah, totally. And just you mentioned something that I found really interesting, which is, in one hand, you have experience with several kind of companies, so every team is different. But what about those? Did you have the experience to make it more with one company, let's say 2-3 more with that company, and what that means for you in terms of, did you saw any change on the team from the first to the second one, to the second one to the third, and so on? Or it's like because it's not a, I'm thinking about more this scaling, right? So it's like how we will turn the team
how would it actually change something?
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, I have. So it's not, I must say, like, let's say the majority of our sprints, we do 1 or 2 or 3, is usually over the course of a longer period of time. So we have done, in particular, like one trajectory, let's say, where we did 8 design sprints. So there, I think that's my experience the most, or at least me personally, I've seen the difference, where I think for me, the difference there was mostly in the beginning, people are just really surprised about how much work gets done and how different it is. And that it's like, people have said it's like, you know, like a work holiday. So we get work done, but it's like, you know, you're out of the office, or at least you're, you know, just getting so much more done. People are, I think, used to meeting a lot, or, you know, talking a lot and not doing so much. But after the newness, then people also become more critical, which I think is a good thing, because, you know, you see that the mindset is changing and that they're asking different questions, and they're being much more critical also on the pre-work. So on, you know, do we have the right challenge, etc. So that's where you kind of see the mindset, you know, maybe changing. But actually, so what I shared with you before as well, so it's because, so I've seen this from my experience, but that was, I don't know if you want to call just 8 sprints, but I don't think I can really say that on an individual level. Yeah, I definitely would say that people, you know, can change based on what they see, what they experience, but, you know, can that really change or transform really a company or a culture? Yes. So I was actually interested about this as well. So last year, at the end of last year, I interviewed some companies, or some design leads or lead facilitators of a few companies that really have used the design sprint as a tool for change or transformation. So that was Tetra Pak, in case anybody knows them. So they're a Swedish company that is really, they're a big fan of the design sprint, and IBM has done this as well. Pearson, which is a learning company, and PwC. So I interviewed those, and all those companies, they've done more than 50 design sprints internally. So I think, you know, based on what I learned from them, I could kind of connect it to what I see as well. But I think they have a, let's say, a better track record in one company, at least, to see, you know, can it actually transform? Yes. And kind of as a spoiler, I would say, yes, it can.
I found really so interesting that this PwC, sorry, because it's a really huge corporation. So because I remind this company, I have a cousin that worked there a few years ago. He was an accountant, and he was like,
Yeah.
I can imagine that company, like really tough company to do a digital transformation, right? But it needs to happen. So they need to adapt. So how was it with all this? How did you come with this? So you start watching, let's say, insights, the same kind of insights in the companies, some different companies for sure, with same insights. Like, so something is happening, and
Yeah, so I think so. The interesting thing, and I would definitely say, I don't know if the whole of PwC has transformed because of design sprints. I think that would be, I don't know. I don't think that's a statement we can really make. But at least it has had impact, at least in some areas of the company, let's say.
yeah.
But yeah, exactly. So what I did I made sense, or I tried to make sense of what I saw myself and what these companies told me. And I think, or not, the companies didn't tell me, the people told me that have ran so many sprints. But I think it's an important, or what was interesting for me is also that none of them really set out with an idea of, hey, let's change the company, or let's change the culture, and let's use the sprint for this. Because I don't think also the design sprint, I mean, it was never really developed by Jake and by John as an instrument for, change management or whatever. It's much more, let's build new products, new services, let's deliver value to the customer. So I think that's primary. But the interesting thing that I found, I kind of found 5 phases, or I tried to make sense of 5 phases that I saw, how do you kind of, I don't know, convince people to do more sprints? Because I think why I find this interesting as well, maybe a good thing, is that, like I said before, I really believe in it. And I think, design thinking, or whatever you want to call it, I think there's so much value in the way people work and the way they look at their work that, in that sense, I do think more people should be doing them. Yes. So what I found, or what they kind of all said, and what I see as well, is kind of first how they started off is just, obviously it makes sense, but just to run your first design sprint. So, and I think the beauty of the design sprint is that it solves problems. So you put a problem in and you get a solution or a direction out. And if you focus that on whatever problem you're having, perhaps internally, then that's already a win, because you're taking away a bottleneck, or you're creating more value for your own customers, or it could be that you're creating more value for your employees. It depends on what challenge you put in.
Yes.
But I think that's where it's obvious, but that's where it literally starts. It's just, to run your first design sprint and to fix something, to show the results, and to see that it can be done already in 1 week. And that's how I think any company, and they also started.
Totally. So about this, let's say, insights and that you found, and some other topics that we were talking about this 5 pillars that you have, or some ideas that you have, is okay, why did I found, and of course how this can be also more even more worked. How can I more how can I phrase this? Is I'm imagine me putting this in the company. I think I think everyone will say that there is like a fear of selling the design sprint. This is something that I told you today. This is maybe we are like going back with this regarding design sprint. How is your experience about the selling this, and because most of people, until they don't see something like tangible, or they don't believe it, sometimes it's like crazy, but it happens to all of us for sure with a lot of things. How was your experience with that? So how many fights did you fight in terms of that? Did you lose someone, or did you learn about this losing some fight and they said, okay, I can do it until here, and then no, I can move on, and or just I will say the other way around to see if I can catch them from this point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, for me, so there's one thing, so I definitely recognize what you're saying, and it's the lucky thing we have at this point is that people come to us with the question, hey, let's run a design sprint. But I have noticed, you know, before that as well, like it can be a very difficult thing to convince someone to do a design sprint, even though you feel like this could be a really good solution for them, because it is, I don't know, like you say, if you haven't experienced it, it's tough to do. So I think that kind of goes back to what I was just saying before as well. I mean, if you have, let's say you as an individual, or if you're listening and you're a designer or you're a facilitator or you're a product owner, whoever, and you think, hey, this is something we should try. So, I mean, at least you first need someone that's convinced, and I hope it's, you know, you. Yeah. Then if possible, I mean, first perhaps on, I don't know, call it the lowdown, or just get a team together and see, can you actually make it happen? So perhaps also, I think it's sometimes maybe difficult for a company to say yes, and let's say, let's invest in hiring someone. But the beauty of the design sprint is also, I mean, you know, the book that has been written, I mean, it's quite practical in that I would say just start. Yeah. And do keeping in mind, it does really help if you do have some facilitation experience, because otherwise it can be tough. Yeah. But I think it's just, like I said, it's getting that first design sprint in, and then just literally also showing how much results you can get. And another way, which I really liked, I think Lee told me about this, and I recognize it. I heard you just say the lightning decision jam, yes, which is, you know, a short exercise perhaps that, you know, at least people get to experience some of the elements of together alone and the voting and just how quick you can get results. But Lee called it camouflage it, or sneak it into the company. So he said in any meeting that you're in, perhaps, so if, you know, if your company or your team is hesitant about this, he said, just, you know, add it on to a meeting. So don't like invite people and prepare something, but maybe even just take 15 minutes at the end of the meeting and just do one exercise. So just to kind of see, hey, you know, this is, and for me, together alone is a really, how do I say, like a typical or practical one that even without a whole lightning decision jam, you know, whatever agenda point that's there, you know, have people write it on a post-it, vote on it, and then create priorities, just, or have people draw down some ideas and just sneak in some elements so that people experience it. Because I think there's a lot of, how do I say, unknown. And when people have some experience with things, then it might kind of, you know, it opens up the conversation. Let me put it that way. And I think that's what you want.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, because I saw the faces that are in the mural. Everyone can see it actually. About this sneaking, the camouflage. You know, I found it really interesting also because I did this lighting design jam today, and it was my first one, and I was like, okay, hey, like you said, it was just okay. Let's just do it. I never did it, and I was like, I was not. Maybe I was afraid, I mean, to recognize it myself. I was afraid to, you know, this feeling that we all have about the failing. What happened if I don't know? What happened if I don't know how to lead? And you need to learn this by doing. There's no other way. So I just jumped. Yeah. And it was quite good. A few pitfalls here and there, but it's like, okay, next time I will improve. But it took in well in a good direction. But just since you mentioned this about the how to sneak this, which exercise do you think that besides this can be, or maybe not just all the light decision jam, because it takes like maybe 45 minutes an hour, but maybe just one voting could be just which other exercise from the whole aspect of the very first days of the design sprint you think is good to maybe sneak in sometimes? Or which one would you recommend, or how did you saw that in the companies that you work for?
Yeah, I think so. The what you just said, so a lightning decision jam, or just the basics of like a together alone, which is just maybe one element. And otherwise, I like to do is this just the silent brainstorm as well. So I don't know if it is an element of the design sprint, which also can be, you know, maybe in 10 minutes. And I think So there it's also just to have people get a, instead of talking about something for an hour, just take 10 minutes and draw it out and then show each other and talk about it. Then you have something tangible. So the making it visual, and I think in all the things I would almost recommend it, it's always this kind, I don't know if always, but like a together alone. So first in silence, because I think what we want to do or want to stop doing is talking and just get people to do something. So I think in that sense, and I'm thinking now, so those are the two I use mostly. So it's either drawing.
Someone
or,
that in my mind is the Crazy 8, right? About the
exactly.
the drawing. It's really interesting, and you really got the nerves for this Crazy 8, because it's like you don't have too much time. You just need to jump to the other screen, let's say, or whatever you want to design or present.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think a Crazy 8 is also perfect because that's really short. And sometimes, I don't know if it's really a design sprint element, but it could be as part of the meeting if you're saying, because if you want people to get more visual or to draw more or to, so I'm definitely not. So also I'm not a designer, so I'm just purely a facilitator. So I'm also not a good drawer or anything.
I forgot about your background. I was about to ask beforehand.
No, so what I do sometimes do is just give a little drawing lesson. So I think what I've noticed is that also for, getting people excited about the design sprint, or I think for me, it's about the way of working. It's also to let people do something different. So already just giving them an excuse to draw something and just a few basic elements on how to draw a person, or I play Pictionary with them, where you literally on whatever topic that you're discussing or product that you're developing, just think about 8 words. And then it's the same as a Crazy 8. I use it as a warm-up as a Crazy 8, just to say, hey, it doesn't have to be beautiful, but just draw. And just say like the eight words. So it's, I don't know,
like a break
to warm them up.
Breaker. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Yeah. So that works well as well. But I think it's, and another thing that I'm thinking, so it's not really an exercise, but what I have noticed, so I used to be, or still am, I don't know, or I'm quite a, let's say, call it, I don't know if it's a word, but a design sprint purist. So I'm very like, true to the method and the framework. So I also used to always call it a design sprint, because I was like, that's what it is. So that's what people should call it. And, let's not confuse it. But what I have noticed over the years is that sometimes you just don't call it design, because it's, I think, depending on who you're talking to. So I think designers and within marketing, I probably as well, or product owners, people understand that design is,
colors.
Or a process or
but colors. It's funny.
And then I think if the people say, why a design sprint, that we're just, that's about how the website will look, it's so people will always have an association with it. So it's, use what I try to do now is I use the terminology of the company, whatever. So I don't care what I call it. I just call it what you need me to call it. And I do the process. So that can help as well, because design is, I hope that we, all stimulate a design culture in the biggest sense of the word. But sometimes that we need to not call it design culture in order to kind of make that fly. I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was when I saw this in the topics, it was like, I mean, I totally agree. There's just a mindset regarding this, that everyone goes towards one direction, and I found really interesting also to accommodate to the terminology of the company, which is you really need to talk the same language, of course, and this is how we also create a lot of empathy. The same happens when you create a product, and you need to talk about the same language of the user, for sure. Cool. And what about this ambassador things that you also added here? So in the meantime, so the very first design sprint that you can create with the company is like okay, let's say it's a success and so on, and everyone's like excited about it and so on, and see more results, and they can ask you, how we move on with this. So how we, let's say, let's say that maybe some company doesn't work to, like you said before, maybe doesn't hire anything or just once, and because it's happened for sure, and then they want to do it, or have, like you said, some ambassador. It's like, how do you saw this, or how was your experience about this? Did someone approach you to tell, hey, I'm really interested in this, and you saw the spark and you said, okay, I will teach you with my Padawan or something, and yeah.
No, so I think what I see happening, and it's what I heard from also the companies I spoke to, but I see it myself as well, is that kind of like design sprints are almost contagious, let's say, because like I said, it's, and you experienced yourself that you think, it's a different way of working, or it's fun, it's productive, it's focused, it has all these elements in it where you're working hard and doing stuff, but it's not in the traditional way that your normal day or your normal week is spent, let's say. And so what I mean with like also creating ambassadors, or that it's contagious, that usually it can be that for the first design sprint, you have to like lure in people and like ask them, do they want to join? And what I've always noticed is after you've done a few, people line up and that they want to join. So, and I think that's the beauty of it as well, is, kind of to pick up that momentum and to kind of, I don't know, call it cherish or whatever, the people that are interested, and kind of also, so what I would often do, or what I do often do in companies, if I do multiple sprints, there'll usually be 2 or 3 people that are kind of the same, because it is good for momentum for them. Those are people that know the process, but then depending on whatever challenge, you bring in, whatever 2 or 3 extra people, maybe 4, based on experience, or based on whatever you need. And that's, again, kind of with every sprint, you're literally, kind of training people. So not only in the results that you're getting, but they're also, trained in a different way of working. And I think that's an interesting, and another thing that I've noticed, so that's also, so sometimes if people aren't that familiar with the design sprint as well, so a client, so not the person that will hire me, but let's say people in the room, they come in and they're like, oh, my 5 days of workshop,
exactly,
and
exactly.
Sit back and
or maybe they can take 5 days of not work.
Or people say, oh, what are you going to tell me? What are you going to teach me? And I'm like, well, I'm okay, I might teach you something, but I'm like, I'm not going to tell you anything. You're going to tell me what to do. As in, I mean, I have the process, but I don't know anything about the content. No, nothing at all. And I think that when people realize, hey, and that's an important thing, I think, for a facilitator, I have no opinion. So, I mean, I have lots of experience, and I can push and probe and say, hey, interesting what you're saying, or you're not looking here. And I've seen this in other industries. But besides that, I don't vote. I don't, whatever decision comes out of the team, that's the team. And I think that's also why the process is, I don't know, creates fans as well. Is that people see, hey, I'm like, me, or you, if you're a facilitator, you're actually here to help me. You're here to help solve my problems. And, I'm not a consultant pushing some ideas or anything. And I think that's, that kind of wins hearts, or whatever you want to call it, that makes people excited as well. And because people want their problem solved. And I mean, that problem, that's kind of what I said earlier with, you run design sprints to stay fit, or to stay, and those problems can be, I think we often do it like customer facing, because we want to create value for our customers, but it could very well be internally. Like, I think, especially with larger companies, we want better apps, and we want better, I say we, I don't work in a large company, but people want, better processes to work with. And the happier, employees are, the happier they can make their customers. So I think it's like this, how do I say, all connected
something
process.
Exactly, something that I'm trying to explore myself with me so far, and then we'll see if I can spread it, is doing this. So it does nothing to do, but it does at the same point. I'm doing coaching, right? Coaching lessons. I have my own coach in Argentina, and what I found really interesting is how the coaching can help you to solve problems as well. what about if we start mixing exercises, design sprint and coaching and so on? I saw a few things about this already, like a customer journey, but your own customer journey, let's say. So this is another point of view that also can be scalable, not just in a company, but like you said, it will turn into a cultural change inside right, of a company, and that means that it will. That means that people change. So, and that people change the mindset. If people change the mindset, they can also influence their own lives, let's say, because they will be happier or whatever, or more positive, or find another way to see things. So I really see that super interesting.
Yeah, but I think if I can just reply because it's very true, and I think I think with this when we said as well, you know, can design sprints change the way you work? Yes, and can they change a culture? Also, I think yes, but in the end, it's like a slow going, because what you do need to experience it. I think it's a very different thing if people talk about, hey, how cool is this design sprint? It's still not going to. It might be something I'm interested in, but until I've experienced it, and depending on, and it's also about what behavior, you know, do you want to stimulate or change within the company? And I think, but that's my personal and professional opinion, where the beauty of the design sprint, why it's so interesting for this, like, I don't know, call it a cultural change or a shift, is, you know, if we look at everything that's needed within companies, and also now, you know, it's problem solving, it's you know, it's about creativity, it's about collaboration, you know, and all these things are at prototyping, you know, thinking in experiments, all these things I think are needed for any company, or it's, you know, it's, if I speak to HR of companies, that's what they want to do. And then I'm like, well, do a design sprint, because it's, I mean, solve whatever problem that you need solving. And while you're doing it, people are learning about all these things without, you know, I don't know, sitting in a module of, you know,
101 interview,
how to be more creative, or I don't know. But, and I think, and that's where exactly through the doing, which makes sense, that the change comes. And it can be in little things also. So what I notice as well, so I love it if, you know, people that I've run design sprint with years ago still come up to me now and they say, oh, you know, I'm still drawing in meetings. You know, it's little things. So it's not about, you know, is everybody now going to work in a design sprint? You know, is everybody, but it's about taking elements, what we said before, and, you know, what have you changed, and how has this also, you know, I don't know, changed your interaction with your own team? And because I think in that sense, things get moving, or get changing.
Agree. Why don't we go to the mural, and let's say, because people is adding some stuff there, we are like not ending about time, but we can go and start checking that, and we can answer a few things from that. Don't be shy. I will encourage people on YouTube as well.
So I'm looking to the side. I'm looking at hang on.
Yes. So there are a couple of it. So I added a few on the top about anything that anyone can ask, and there are some others related to these phases for sure. Perhaps we can go better with the phases first, and then we see the other one.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So the first one actually is the design sprint, say fit. How did you find out if it's a challenge, if it's the right one to do? So, sorry, how did you find out if the challenge is the right one to do design sprint? Let's say, let's apply a design sprint here or not.
Yes, I think, to be honest, that's still sometimes a difficult question for me. And I mean, and after I've done so many, but I think a few criteria that I mean, so there's different things that you can look at. And I would say, even though I'm a big fan, you know, it's definitely not, I wouldn't say do it for everything. But so a few things that I look at on the one hand is urgency. So it should be something that should be solved in a relative, let's say, short period of time. Let it be 3 months or 6 months, or maybe in a year that they want something. And why? Because I've seen that at least also if you're starting out, and a year would actually be too long, but I think if you're trying to convince people of, you know, trying a design sprint as well, urgency, because the design sprints create fast results, is that's a big thing. And in the end, I think, so a challenge, what I see happening a lot is that the challenge is framed from the company perspective, that they say, oh, we want, you know, 10% more market share in, I don't know, for this customer segment. You know, that's for me not a design sprint challenge. So it's always about kind of finding customer insights, or whatever problem that you have. And I mean, that's also, again, what I've seen, is when is a challenge a right challenge? So it's perhaps not a very particular example, but what I have seen work is if something has been a challenge for a year, maybe 2 years, and like, you know, people talk about it, but don't do anything. So it's definitely those things where I think there's a lot of things in companies where they know something, but that there's so many ideas, ways to approach it, and they don't know how. That usually, those are good challenges as well. And I'm kind of talking now, and the way I'm giving my answer is also, hey, how to select the challenge that will also convince people, hey, we should do more of these. And I think something to be mindful for is it big enough? So is it complex enough? Or is it, can we already actually sit down for a day and, you know, just come up with something? And one thing, sorry, I keep saying, and one other thing, what I see happening, but I don't know if those are I wouldn't advise it as a first design sprint to do, but when a lot of people disagree about something. So when a lot of people disagree, when there's a lot of opinions, and because there's so many opinions, you know, it's not going anywhere, because, you know, a problem or an idea is, you know, being pulled in 10 directions. That's also a good way. So it's definitely, for alignment, it's also a good idea.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so let's jump to the other ones. The other one also in that, well, how to build the empathy is like huge.
That's a big, I think we can do a whole session on that, but maybe
one event with this, but yeah.
But maybe for whoever asked it, can you maybe make it a bit more specific? Because empathy, do you mean empathy with your team, or with the customer, or with?
So we can leave it at that for later. And anyone that, if you are hearing, of course, just make it more specific towards something, like, because it's like too big. The other one is like, which skills besides design thinking, design sprint, UX, and so on, would you recommend to be a good facilitator? So
I think actually what it's taught me a lot. So I think so it helps in general if you are used to groups. So that just helps, you know, where I used to be a teacher also at the university before, I mean, years ago. But I think it helps if you're in front of groups, that if you're comfortable. But I think the biggest thing that it has taught me is kind of, I would almost go into like the mindfulness area, is that it just to let go of your ego and to like really have no opinion. Because I think that's so it's not a, let's say, a skill or like a, I don't know, a certificate, or like you can train in mindfulness as well. But what I mean with that is that it's, you know, you really need to listen. So the design sprint is not about you, it's about the team, and you're helping them. And I think that has honestly been the biggest lesson for me. And the interesting thing also in like my own personal growth, let's say, is that I found this whole process of being a facilitator super humbling, because there's been sprints where, you know, I'm like convinced that something that a team comes up with is, you know, a bad idea or a good idea or whatever. And then, but I've talked to so many customers at the end of that week, and that, you know, I've been wrong so many times that I can honestly now say I have no opinion, you know, and I can say, like, you know, I mean, I have an opinion, but it's not worth anything. And I think, so in what does it take to be a good facilitator? I think it's especially if you know from yourself that you get very involved, it could be that, you know, that's why like a facilitating and a co-facilitator really works. So I know that some people are much better co-facilitators, because then you do have a bit more room to be opinionated and to challenge from the content. But as a facilitator, I would say, so sometimes it's actually difficult to, in my opinion, be a designer and be a facilitator. So not be, I mean, it's okay to be a designer and a facilitator, but I mean, but to be, yeah, and to be the, but what I mean specifically to be the prototyper in that sprint. So what I see a lot of people do, and I have a lot of respect for it if you do it, is like, you know, facilitate and design, which to me is like, you have two hats on, and it's, I would always say, you know, and give yourself a break, you know, it's so much pressure on you.
Yeah, you cannot, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can, but it's dangerous because of the bias also. So it's like I mean, you need to take a look of the rest of the people is needing or watching or hearing or to go with flow, for sure. And I found also interesting because I also heard from other people from the UX environment in Argentina, some of this, she was a speaker in another of the events that I was organizing there, and she mentioned something about mixing neuro-linguistic programming. You know, how to read people, how to encompass people, how to hear them, how to move with them, right? It's like the flow. And obviously, if the typical thing is that what happened with this trolls, right? Let's call it trolls, or people that is like not in the mood for the science sprint, or at least like always like hitting in the other direction, and it's not helping to the group and so on, for sure. But I think that's kind of soft skills are like super interesting.
No, definitely. And I think what you just said about what you mentioned about coaching, or so, I think all that soft stuff, I would say, is interesting. And I'm working right now with a neuroscientist at the moment, because I mean, a lot of things I just do out of practice and out of whatever. But especially now that we're doing a lot of things online, I found it really interesting to see, hey, you know, what actually happens in your brain and in order to focus and how to understand. So sorry, this is not really an answer to the question, but I'm being triggered with what you say with the neuro-linguistic,
I think the
NLP.
Kind of.
But no, but so for example, so actually, sorry, that's one thing that you, as a facilitator, I think is curiosity, by the way. So you should be curious, which is why I'm going on a tangent. But no, so I found it super interesting. So for what I'm learning from him, or it's so energizers that I use in a design sprint, for example, and I use them much more online than offline. Because online, just the dynamics are different, energy is different. And what I found super interesting is, for example, I don't know if you know this icebreaker, touch blue, or it's not an icebreaker, it's an energizer. So if energy is down, it's like touch blue, it's called. So at the moment, so everybody in the call, if I say touch blue, everybody has to get something blue that's nearby.
Okay. That's cool.
For me, and then
makes you move.
Right? So it makes you move, and I have, well, this is my blue right now, a big exactly.
Okay.
And then so whoever is last has to pick the next color or next object. So you can do that 4 or 5 times. Really cool. And I mean, so I know that it works out of practice. And it just gets people moving, like you said, it gets some blood moving. But what I found really interesting from this neurologist is that he said, hey, but what literally happens, you should actually, for example, do this energizer before you have a big decision moment. Because what it does, it literally gets your blood flowing, but it also, because it's competitive, it releases testosterone. And the testosterone actually makes you able to focus much better. All right. So then if you're in front of a decision moment, you know, so I find it super interesting to look at the sprint and at moments in energy, hey, what to do when. So it looks like a silly energizer thing, but hey, you can actually use it as like in different parts, and there's really different, you know, different types of energizers like this.
I love it. I love it. I really like the idea. Because it's totally, it's a matter of the mood and so on. It's like how I can light up people. It's like And also I think it's, and obviously it will, that also will not just the exercise that you're doing, but the mood of the people and how the people is in the inside, their own energy and so on. It will impact a lot in the process and a lot in
Yeah.
the product and then the solution, let's say, or the problems that
Yeah.
they solve or whatever. But yeah, okay, so maybe we can do another event for this for sure, because
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
love
That's
it.
a
It's
whole
really interesting.
yeah, yeah,
I love
yeah,
all
cool.
neuroscience and so on, how this mix with all these things. So let's go with another one in the same arrows. So the empathy still is like big, so no one
Big, yeah.
changes. So let's see another. How do you prepare yourself before a sprint? How deep are you in the challenge subject? This is one.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, for me, so less and less. So when I first started to do design sprints, like I said, I used to, read up about the challenge and try to understand it and look for reports and, be really knowledgeable. But I've realized that that's not my job. So I would say, I mean, there's always preparation in the design sprint, and just a lot of it is actually organizational. It's just, is the team up to date? Do they know the expectations? Do you have your problem framing correct? But so my focus is fully on the team and the process. So I no longer read into the challenge really. I mean, except for understanding the scope. And then the Monday, that's just my day of listening and asking questions, because I've noticed that the less I actually know in depth, the more focused I can be on Monday. Because I'm kind of a novice, so I can ask the questions that otherwise maybe I would already be assuming something. So I would say not too much preparation, if that makes sense, but do prep really well on the process, and that people know what's going on and expectations, etc. That I think is most important.
Okay, cool. Let's go to the other one. I heard often that people were missing discussions during the sprint. How do you surface? I don't know what it
So
means.
people are missing. So
Missing discussions during the sprint. So,
I'm assuming here, but I'm not sure if that's the question. That
yeah,
like,
me
if
neither.
I mean, if people miss the discussion, then I would assume that they're out of the room. So I have I'm very strict on this. You're in or you're out. So
Exactly.
there
It's
is
like
no
not going to one and just
no. So there's no like, oh, I'll come this afternoon and that morning. No, you're in 5 days or you're not coming at all. So in that sense, I would say I tackle everybody. Nobody misses a discussion because everybody's in the room.
sure.
And I think in terms of, that's actually a really important one also in terms of learnings. So I have had it that, and it's actually the same with the decider. So I would always also say the decider needs to be in the room the whole week. And what happens a lot is that, people say, oh, the decider, they can make the whole week free. Then I say appoint someone else or delegate someone, because I've had it once in a sprint where the decider came on the Wednesday. They kind of did like a kickoff on Monday.
Yes.
And then he came back on the Wednesday. But then based on the feedback, even though he had missed, 2.5 days of discussions and decisions, he didn't agree with something that was on the storyboard. And like the team, first of all, it demotivated everybody extremely, and it like totally switched the direction. I'm like, yes, but it was just hijacked. So my lesson there was no, everybody in the room all the time.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree. Okay, let's go with there is nothing for phase 2 or phase 3. So let's go to phase 4, which is the grow prototyping mindsets. Unexpected cultural shift. So often people think of too many constraints. How do you shift people to outside the box thinking? Let's say.
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of I'm thinking how I can answer it in a good way.
Sure.
So I think I don't know, constraints can be looked at in different ways, I suppose, as well. So what I notice, on the one hand, a constraint is something kind of like internal. So I think what I see a lot is that people have like a fear of, drawing or making mistakes or coming up with ideas. So this is kind of what I said earlier. So I do within the sprint quite a few, I don't know, call it warm-ups or exercises where you just get people kind of used to and it, like drawing, for example. So it's not about them drawing like simple things, but it is about, hey, you know, it really doesn't matter what I put on paper as long as I put something on paper. So I think that's kind of a constraint that's more internal.
Yes.
And if people think of constraints more like, oh, we can't build this, or this is not possible, what I usually say, just go bold. I mean, this is your, I mean, so it's, I think sometimes already actually in a, like a few words or a sentence, or just that they are allowed to go bold or to go big, will sometimes already let it go. So I always say, hey, don't think about, is this possible? We'll get to that later. So I think that's kind of, we first have to, you know, get the ideas out. And after we get the ideas out, then we have to storyboard them. And within the storyboarding, maybe they become already a little bit more realistic. But even then, it doesn't have to be 100% realistic yet, because we first have to test, is this a good idea at all? And if it is, then we worry about, you know, how do we build it? But I don't know if that's the constraints that we're talking about, but I definitely, it's continuous as a facilitator, kind of encouraging, you know, think big, dare to go bold. Yeah, so
yeah, totally,
I don't know if that helps.
and yeah, exactly. And this is good. I mean, in one hand, as a facilitator, I think, and you mentioned this before, about not being, so you're not, exactly, you don't have your opinion, you are going to help the other team, and to be like as a coach, let's say, or something.
Yeah.
To remove any constraints. Yeah. Okay, one other question is, I experienced that people struggle with the right scope of ideas. Too close versus too innovative, sorry. So about the cultural shifts. So it's
So I don't know if this is like, I'm relating everything, by the way, my answers, I'm relating literally to the design sprint. So like, I'm thinking of the week as well. So
sure.
If we're looking at prototyping, that is literally, like, you know, getting the ideas on paper and building them. So I do recognize that people think on very different levels. Some people keep it very close and very practical, is like, let's do it tomorrow. And other people go a little bit too bold and it's not possible. But what I found, or what I find interesting, that, you know, let's say you have 7 people on the team, and I never have it that everybody is on that, like, you know, really small side, and 7 people are on the, you know, let's go big and too innovative side. So the interesting thing I think about the design sprint as well is that first everybody gets their ideas on paper, and as you're going through them, you'll have like some ideas across that whole spectrum. And I think that when making the decisions, it already evens out. So I would almost say that that's the beauty I find of the design sprint, that this question as well, and the same with the one before, almost the process almost takes care of it. So yeah, I think it's I don't have that trouble that much, at least not with the results of the design sprint in what's because yeah, you kind of make the best decisions based on what's been created, and that's always quite a range of things.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, that's another one about that's phase 5, and about best continuing education in Germany, actually, that you would recommend related to design sprint.
In Germany, also specifically.
On my side, I don't.
Maybe you know
much, actually. I would say maybe Sabrina. They can contact Sabrina in Stuttgart.
Yeah, Sabrina Gorlich.
Yeah, it's we can add the name over there.
And actually, the interesting thing, if you're interested, because I know Sabrina is what Sabrina actually does, and what I really like is that she actually I don't know if she calls it this way, but she does train, let's say, facilitators or and literally gives them experience as well. So there's AJ of Smart, of course, that, you know, that do the, like, let's say, the certificate and the theory part. But I would definitely say I would go for the experience. And then Sabrina, I think, is a super good And she actually has how do I say, a course, Design Sprint
Okay.
Master Pro, I think
Okay.
it's called.
I
I
just
can put it.
I just added the
Yeah.
LinkedIn from Sabrina,
Add it.
the mural,
Perfect.
so that everyone
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
have it and they can link and go there. Also, the people that are interested here in Germany for this, they can contact her, of course. Probably, yeah. Okay, there is one more about about the face. Yes, how do you get a senior leadership by into scale design sprint in a large orgs?
Yes, I think this is kind of where, how do I say, the at least what I try to say, the whole, like all the phases, I don't know, I call them phases, but it's yeah, I think senior leadership, if it's usually in my experience, they're relatively new to this. So what they need to see is kind of, a win or a success. So in that sense, if you're able to, at least do one design sprint and tackle something that's, a big challenge, and perhaps it could already be, find first a challenge that's painful to the company, is something that they haven't been able to solve for a year or two, or just haven't gotten around to it. And the beauty, on the other hand, of the design sprint is also, hey, just give me 1 week. You're not asking for 3 months, a whole side project. It's give me a week, and I will get you results. So I think that can be a way. And there is actually, if you would look on Medium, and literally, I think Google or search on Medium, getting buy-in for the design sprint or senior buy-in. I think I don't know who, but they wrote an article about it, which was awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Then there is another one more. Let's go back to phase 1, because there was one more new one, and it says, how do you prepare yourself before a sprint? How deep into the challenge update did we read this? I think we read it.
Yeah, we did that one. And actually, I'm thinking one more thing. What I often say to companies that helps me, let's say, sell it, is, and it is true that I say, hey, let's condense 3 to 5 months of meetings into 1 week. And I think, and that's literally because that is what it does. It's, I think the way companies and teams are structured is that they talk a lot and decisions are postponed, etc. And I mean, people can do the math. If you're, waiting or spending all this time in meetings, it's very expensive. So invest a week, maybe even hire someone for that week to make sure it's a success. But that sentence usually works.
Cool. All right, then. I think we cover almost everything. It's always everything. Let's say we covered most of the things that people were asking. It was a pleasure to talk with you about this. I found really interesting. I think we really need to do some other meeting regarding neuroscience. We can talk later on. We can do our own research, because I'm really, like I said, mixing all this, any of the UX exercises for your own purpose, let's say, and then put it into the helping people by something, not just designers, obviously. I found it super interesting. So maybe we can do a talk about it and do an investigation and research and so on, and share the come out. Okay, so I think if the people doesn't have any other questions, there is no other in the mural. I think we are okay so far.
Yeah, and otherwise, I was gonna say, whoever is still listening and able to, then, I mean, feel free to add me also on LinkedIn and ask any questions that you might have. Maybe they come up later. And
sure, totally. All of those that are added there. I think there is one people that is struggling with the picture because it's not loading. But anyway, don't worry. That the link for those that are worrying about that, we can keep this mural for a couple of days, and then just it will go out. So be be smart and go now, and I will also spread the voice to the other people. Yes, to the other people that said that it's not here in the event, but maybe they said, yeah, I will go, but they're not. So they can also have the contacts from the other people, which is really interesting to make networking. All right.
And by the way, if you're super practical, if the people, or you said that some people don't have the picture, it has to do with your privacy settings on LinkedIn.
Yeah, totally. That's a
so
good.
In case whoever is wanting, I mean, and if you don't want the picture there, also totally fine. Also totally fine. You don't need to change anything, but if it's bothering you, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. The link will work anyway. But,
exactly.
but yeah, sometimes it's a bit annoying and so on, of course.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I will go back here now just to. Okay, thank you so much for this. I really loved this way of going with the flow, and so, like we said the other day, yeah, totally agree. And about everything, I really loved every detail that you mentioned. I took my own notes to be to find out more. Obviously, maybe I will ask you more things personally, but because I need to know also how to sell this inside the company I'm working for.
Yeah.
So it's just I'm the host. I'm also a participant. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the mural. Thank you so much for the whole aspects. A bunch of people that were saying that it was amazing, great talk, and so on. So I can share with you this in YouTube. So for everyone, this will be in YouTube for sure. Now that soon goes out, there will be a recording, and it will be also be the recording in the IDF Cologne. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone. That is till there. A few people go out already. I think yeah, most of it is
fully understand.
It's late here. It's too early in Argentina to go back to work. And, yeah. So
no,
thank
perfect.
you.
But and same for me, Hernan. Thanks for the invite, and I hope thanks everybody for listening. If you're still here, respect that you're still listening. But yeah, either good day to everybody in Argentina and good evening for the rest. And but thanks, Hernan, and always happy to help if there's anything else.
Sure. All right then. So see you next time, and guys, from the next one, we'll see what is it. But I think there is something interesting that is happening regarding cognitive bias. So probably we have someone regarding that. Some guy that wrote a book about it in Book Apart. So yeah.
Yep.
I will.
Oh, you shared him with me. Super interesting topic.
Yeah,
I'll be there.
Really, of course. This is what I'm telling you. All right.
Yeah.
So, see you, and thank you so much again. We see you around.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.